What did the wife of a Levite in Ephraim do, and where did she decide to go? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 19 verses 1 to 10, but before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Judges 19 verse 1, but if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges chapter 19, beginning at verse 1. And it came to pass in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote mountains of Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him, and went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there 4 whole months. Then her husband arose, and went after her, to speak kindly to her, and bring her back, having his servant and a couple of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the young woman's father, detained him, and he stayed with him 3 days. So he ate and drank and lodged there. Then it came to pass on the 4th day, that they arose early in the morning, and he stood to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, "Refresh your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way." So they sat down, and the 2 of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, "Please be content to stay all night, and let your heart be merry." And when the man stood to depart, his father-in-law urged him, so he lodged there again. Then he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. But the young woman's father said, "Please refresh your heart." So they delayed until afternoon, and both of them ate. And when the man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, "Look, the day is now drawing towards evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry. Tomorrow go your way early, so that you may get home." However, the man was not willing to spend that night. So he rose and departed, and came opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. With him were the 2 saddled donkeys. His concubine was also with him. In the last 2 chapters, we've been looking at the establishment of the settlement of some of the tribe of Dan in Laish, which is located in northern Israel. The reason that they're attached to the end of the book of Judges, even though they don't mention a judge, is because they occur during the period of the Judges and help explain why there are Danites in northern Israel in the days of the kings. The last 3 chapters of Judges are not connected to chapters 17 and 18, although a mention of Dan to Beersheba in chapter 20 likely means this occurred after the events found there. Judges 20 will also tell us that Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, is high priest in Shiloh, thus placing these events not too long after the death of Joshua, though it is possible that we're a few years removed from it, since we don't know how old Phinehas is, either when he became high priest, nor in the events here in chapters 19 through 21. As for the story itself, it concerns another Levite who lived in Ephraim, but is likely told to help explain the near extermination of the tribe of Benjamin, the reasons behind it, the aftermath of it, as well as the moral decline in Israel following the days of Joshua. In verses 1 to 10 of Judges 19, we find that a Levite in Ephraim had taken a concubine from the daughters of the family in Bethlehem in Judah. Back in Leviticus 21, we were given instructions for the marriage of priests, but no prohibition was given on the priests having concubines. So in that regard, the priests were not held to a higher standard than other people in Israel, though that was certainly not by God's original design for marriage, nor is it his design for marriage under the new covenant of Christ. This concubine is said to have played the harlot against him, which could mean that she was unfaithful to him, but from her actions in returning to her father's house and his later actions in going to reconcile, it could simply mean that she revolted against him, for whatever reason we do not know, and fled back home. I tend to believe the latter, based on the whole tenor of the story. 4 months have passed, and the Levite decides to travel to Bethlehem of Judah in order to bring his wife back home. He left with a couple of donkeys, showing us that he really did intend to bring his wife in peace. He wasn't going to make her walk home. She would have a ride. When he got to Bethlehem, the woman's father was happy to see him. Why? Because for a father, especially at that time, it would always be more desirable to see your daughter be married than to be living at home, where after his death she might not be left well taken care of. If there was any way for reconciliation to occur, that should be sought after. And from all accounts, reconciliation was made, for the daughter agreed to return. Note here, it was the daughter who decided to leave. She wouldn't be forced to leave again just because her husband returned, but she would, of course, be encouraged to. Ultimately, it would be her decision, for otherwise, she would just flee again. It was the intention of the Levite that once reconciliation occurred, that he would immediately return home. But the girl's father entreated the Levite to stay, and so he stayed for 3 days. On the 4th day, again, the girl's father wanted the Levite to stay, and so he stayed. On the 5th day, he tried again, but this time in the afternoon, the Levite insisted that he leave. Now, why would the girl's father act this way? Well, yes, he was being hospitable, but there was likely another motive. He didn't want his daughter to be mistreated once she and her husband returned home. Vindictive men might have punished their concubines for fleeing, and this girl's father didn't want that, so he likely thought that the more he could impress this man, the more likely his daughter would be treated well. But alas, the Levite couldn't stay forever, and so they departed Bethlehem for home. Now before the end of the day, they came opposite Jebus, better known to us as Jerusalem, which was about 8 kilometers or 5 miles from Bethlehem, or about a 2-hour journey at that time. His servant thought that this place looked like a good place to spend the night, but there would be an objection from the Levite. What that objection was, and the resolution of it, we'll discuss, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 19, verses 11 to 21, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.